Hey everybody, so tell you a little story here just happened. I went out driving around to put some political signs in the area. Uh, just go put them in the dirt. You guys have seen all the political signs, vote for this candidate. So that's what I just got done doing. And I spent an hour out there getting quite a few signs put out. But I stopped at T-Mobile tonight to get my screen fixed on my phone. And there's this young man, he's 34 years old, sitting outside because you can't go in there because you have to have a mask on to go into the store, okay? So I told him, I said, well, I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to put the mask on. He said, well, then I guess we'll have to take care of everything out here. So I said, okay, no problem. And as we were talking, I said, so what do you think of this coronavirus thing? And he said, well, he shared his feelings, and we agreed. And then somehow the conversation went to he just went back to school. He's been married for a number of years. He's got a 13-year-old and a 2-year-old kid, I think he said. But he decided he wanted to go back to school. And I said, oh, what are you studying? He said, well, I can't remember what he told me, but he said, well, I just finished a paper on white privilege. I went, okay. I said, okay, so why are you telling me that? He said, well, because the more I understand it, the more it's just a conversation I think we need to have. This was what he said. And I said, well, I don't believe in white privilege. He looked at me like I was a ghost. And I said, yeah, I don't believe in white privilege. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, how much of the Declaration of Independence do you know? And what about the Constitution of the United States? If I asked you 5 questions about the Constitution of the United States, would you be able to answer? He said, no. He said, I really wouldn't. I said, so what are you basing white privilege on if you don't know the Constitution of the country that you live in? So I kind of took him on this little journey, and I said, let's talk about slavery, because I think your motivation is based on what we're seeing, Black Lives Matter. And I said, did you know Black Lives Matter was started by 3 black lesbians? He said, no, I had no idea. And I said, well, let me give you a little bit of information. And so I started running down some stuff to him, and he's like, whoa, I didn't know any of this. And I said, so you're basing your paper on what? What did you base your paper on when you talk about white privilege? And the more I talked to him and drew him out, the more I realized he was reacting to an emotional thing as opposed to factual information. He didn't really have any factual information. I said, you and I have been talking now for several minutes, and you haven't given me any facts based on your dissertation or your paper about why you think white privilege is something that we need to discuss. And I said, so how many black slave owners were there in the 1800s in Louisiana alone? He said, I didn't know. And I said, there were over 900. He had no idea. And I said, how come you never hear about the black folks who were business professionals or congressmen or millionaires or inventors? How come we never hear that conversation? I said, do you know of any of those people? I said, as a matter of fact, do you know of any black people that were successful in the 1800s and 1700s? He said, no. And I said, so what is white privilege? Because the whole world wants to come to America. Why does the whole world want to come to America? I asked him. I said, do you think the whole world wants to come to America because white privilege provides opportunity? He was kind of stumped by that conversation. He didn't know where to go with that. And I said, could it be that freedom is the reason most nations want to come here? I said, for example, if you were living in Indonesia and you and I were having this conversation and somebody decided to complain about it, do you know that government could walk in and take your 2 children and your wife away from you and put you in jail just because you and I were having this conversation? He says, well, I heard it was like that. And I said, see, you heard it was like that, but you don't understand the freedom that this country gives you. And you're talking about white privilege. This nation was built by every race you could think of, and white privilege is a myth. So the more we were talking, he finally asked me, he says, do you lecture? And I said, no, I don't lecture. He says, well, how do you know all this stuff? And I said, because I'm an American, and I decided to pay attention to my freedom and learn the history of my nation. And I said, and what you've been taught and what you're talking about is hyperbole. It doesn't exist. And you haven't been able to answer any of my questions. You don't have any facts. You didn't bring any facts to the conversation. I said, yeah, I've given you a ton of facts. I said, for example, how long did the slave trade last in America? And he said, I think it was about 400 years. And I said, so America's 400 years old? And he says, no, America's not 400 years. So therefore, slavery couldn't have lasted for 400 years in America, right? He says, yeah, I guess so. And I said, when did slavery end? He said, he didn't know. I said, when was the nation? He said 1776. I said, so from 1776 to 1863 is 87 years if you do the math. So the nation was fighting against the slave trade for 87 years, and they were fighting predominantly the Democrat Party. I said, do you not know any of this? He said, no. So then I started giving him the rundown. He said, well, how come all the black folks vote for Democrats? I said, it's the same reason they jump out in the street and riot at the snap of a finger. It's because they don't know their history, they don't understand the truth about the nation, and they don't understand what freedom really is. I said, and the reason they don't understand that, I said, have you ever noticed that the ghettos got bigger, they didn't get better? He thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, he shook my hand. He said, you know, you've taught me a whole bunch of stuff. And I said, no, I discussed a whole bunch of stuff. It's up to you to go learn what I'm talking about, because what you're talking about makes no sense. He shook my hand. He said, stop by my store. He's a manager at a different location. And so I thought, okay. So anyway, that's who I am. I'm going to jump out the car and I'm going to bring facts and I'm going to bring a conversation to you. So if you're black and proud, if you're an African American, if you believe in Black Lives Matter, which is actually a Marxist movement couched in the racism, if you don't understand that, it's because you don't understand anything. You'd rather tear down your neighborhood. So I'm always going to bring the facts to the table as best as I can. And with this young white man, all of 34 years of age, I completely changed his mind about a few things, and I shredded his white privilege paper. This is Jeff. God bless.